So this is a very important question, children, to get your basics very, very clear. First and the most important thing is understand the basic of this lesson, so the rest of the information becomes easy. The major set of elements present in living beings are, is it A, silicon, magnesium, calcium, B, carbon, magnesium, silicon, C, hydrogen, iron, cobalt, or D, carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. See, children, if you take a look at the Earth's crust, especially the elements which you must have come across in chemistry, there are so many elements, isn't it? And in the Earth's crust, if you observe, there are quite a lot of them which might be abundant. And the same thing might not be applicable for living tissues. Like say, for example, you might find gold, in a good quantity in Earth's crust. But if you compare it with the human body, you might be surprised that our body cannot really contain gold at that quantity at all. Okay. So when you observe the elements found in nature and the elements that your body requires, you see that there are certain elements which are very repetitive, like you will see them being a very important component of many, many nutrients. Okay. So of that, before we come to the answer, let's take a look at this particular chart. So if you see this, can you see the Earth's crust? The Earth's crust is having silicon in a good quantity. But is that the same thing in the human body? As you see, no. Same goes for the others, even though iron is there in the body, but it is present in small quantity, not huge quantity. And why do you think so? It has to also be, every element which is in your body, whether it has to be higher or lower, it will depend upon its compatibility and equation leading to the formation of products which will be accepted or absorbed by the body. If it causes harm, then it can be dangerous, isn't it? So the common one, the most abundant ones happens to be which one? Carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. So which was this answer? Option number D, which has carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Can you see that? What happens now? What happens with the others? Some of them, like we say, iron and calcium. So even though there is hydrogen in option number C, it is in combination with iron and cobalt, which are not in huge quantity in the body. Okay. Another one which I would suggest you to remember is that apart from carbon, hydrogen and oxygen, even nitrogen is a very important and abundantly present element in the body. Okay. So further, let's sum your answer up, children. Carbon, hydrogen and oxygen are the elements that make up the majority of the living body. It's true. They constitute the macro and micro biomolecules of the living body. See, children, remember, if you go by the definition given in NCERT, what does it say? Biomolecules are the carbon-containing compound that the living tissue produces. Okay, so that goes by default, and it's carbon. The most abundant element in living tissue by mass is oxygen. So yes, it will vary when it comes to mass or when it comes to the combination. So by mass, please remember, is oxygen. And then silicon, magnesium, calcium, iron and cobalt, even if they are present in the living tissues, they will be found in trace amounts, like little, not like huge. Okay, so trace amounts, very little amount. But even though they are most abundant in the Earth's crust. So even if there is a lot of it in the Earth's crust, doesn't mean that we have to stuff it all in the living tissues as well. Alright, having said this, please keep this in mind. Carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Let's try this one now. About 98% of the mass of every living organism is composed of just 6 elements, which are carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, dash and dash. Now children, when you compare with the elements present in the non-living to the living, so non-living, let's say Earth's crust, and living tissues, we see that 98% of the components basically revolve around these 6 elements. Of course, the 2% extra will be the others which play a significant role in their own level, but you need to be very, very aware about which are these 6 major elements. Okay, so for you know, what are the next 2? Are they A, sulfur magnesium, B, magnesium sodium, C, calcium phosphorus, or D, phosphorus and sulfur? Now here, think about it. Of the options that you're looking at, now this is actually a very easy one to get to the answer, okay? Look at the components or look at the options which are given and think about your own human body, okay? Think about it, like isn't it calcium which is like really, really important and significant as compared to the others? So if you have that concept clear, or if you have that understanding accepted, that yeah, calcium does play an important role, and it's not just the bones. In fact, even in the cells, calcium do play an important role in helping the smaller components move in and out of the cell. So the role of calcium is just not restricted only to the bones, it's also restricted to the movement of the components or the compounds which are produced by the cell or required by the cell, they're in and out. Okay, so the answer is option number C, calcium and phosphorus. All right, let's sum this answer up. About 98% of the mass of every living organism is composed of just 6 elements. These are carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus and calcium. Okay, now these make up for all the biomolecules which are the building blocks of every living organism. Easy? Do remember, it's extremely important. This is a very interesting question, children. Carbohydrates, the most abundant biomolecule on earth, are produced by whom? Okay, so carbohydrates, the most abundant meaning like insufficiently huge quantity. Okay, so they are produced by whom? A, some bacteria, algae and green plants. So the some bacteria is very important, because if we just say bacteria, that means we are including all bacteria. So that will kind of have a different meaning. Okay. B, fungi, algae, green plant cells. C, all bacteria, fungi and algae. Or D, viruses, fungi and bacteria. Now before we go to the answer, children, we are talking about carbohydrates. So carbohydrates is basically something that, let's take the most common one that you must be used to, heard of, glucose. Heard about glucose quite often? Let's start with plants or any photosynthetic organism. Okay, let's start with them. Now, these photosynthetic organisms undergo a process called as photosynthesis to produce glucose, isn't it? Now, this glucose happens to be a carbohydrate. Even if there are other forms, there are still types of carbohydrates, isn't it? Now, this carbohydrate, one, is produced by photosynthetic organisms. If you take a look at your options, we see that fungi, let's start with option B, okay? Fungi is mentioned. Fungi is not really photosynthetic. Do you remember ever hearing about photosynthetic fungi? Not really. So, in fact, they are saprophytic in nature. They derive their nutrition from dead and decaying matter. Even though algae and green plant cells can, but then, they're not the fungi. So, this combination automatically is incorrect. Next one says all bacteria, fungi and algae. Now, think about it. If all bacteria would be able to produce carbohydrate, then, like all those bacteria that probably cause diseases. Let's talk about humans. So, if they cause diseases in our body, imagine those green little bacteria going inside and producing carbohydrate, then what on earth are you doing inside our body? If you can make your own food, go chill somewhere else, isn't it? So, here we go, bacteria. All bacteria? Definitely not. Okay. Then is option number D, viruses. Viruses, fungi and bacteria. Now, here all three of them, you probably should laugh internally thinking they are giving you something. Viruses, really? If viruses were that kind enough to make food for their own selves, then why on earth were we, worried so much about, HIV and then, lots of corona and all. So, viruses are, we can say are like, lazy little people, cannot really do something for themselves. So, they tend to take over the other cells and start using things from there. So, they are not really producing anything, especially not carbohydrate, for the benefit of their environment. So, what is the answer that you are left with, children? A. That's your correct answer. Some bacteria, because there are some bacteria who are photosynthetic in nature. You need to know that. Algae, yes, algae, if you tend to recap what you have studied in your previous class, you would know algae are thallophytes. Thallus, having an undifferentiated body. They don't have root, stem and leaf. But then what they do have is a thallus, a body. And they are photosynthetic, aquatic, photosynthetic, right? Then green plants. Obviously, we have to specify green plants because then there are some plants which are not green in color. So here, if instead of green plants, it would have been all plants, then the option would not really be correct either. So green plants are, the word green plants is very important because they are photosynthetic. There are other plants which are, like let's take into consideration, have you heard about this? Indian pipe plant. This is does not have any green pigment. So it's not photosynthetic in nature. In fact, it is parasitic in nature. Are you understanding? So having said this, let's sum your answer up, children. Here we go. Carbohydrates are produced by the process of photosynthesis, which I'm sure you all will agree to. Photosynthesis is a process of transforming light energy into carbohydrate. Of course, there are lots of reactions which come into picture, but that's not the demand of this question at the moment. Bacteria such as cyanobacteria, okay, cyanobacteria, which is basically also called as blue-green algae commonly. So those algae and green plants are the major producers of carbohydrates on earth, okay? And since all of them are able to do photosynthesis, all thanks to the pigment chlorophyll. Are you getting this? So if there is chlorophyll, you will see them producing carbohydrates. Am I clear? Now, don't think, okay, my mother also, starts cooking things. So is she also photosynthetic? That's definitely no, she's not green. So we are not looking at, we are heterotrophs. So we are using those carbohydrates that the plant produces, making it, easier for us to digest by the process of cooking. Does not mean that the cook in the kitchen also becomes a producer. All right? Keep this in mind. Simple question. Okay, so this is a very, very important question, children. Something with respect to your concept also. So if you're not clear, maybe I'll just give you some trick to get to this answer. Which one of the following is a non-reducing carbohydrate? Non-reducing carbohydrate. Okay, so in the class, I'm sure you must have got a lot of detail about it. There are a lot of information about reducing and non-reducing sugars, yes? So now here when you talk about them, especially non-reducing, reducing and all, you might have a lot of data. You might have a lot of content that, you must have written and practiced and learned. But when you take any question that is, in the multiple choice format, what I strongly suggest is try to come to the answer faster, quicker. That will save you a lot of time from, at times you might think about the answer, then, some other concept might ring in, and that will loop you in too much into thinking and wasting your time and probably draining your energy as well, okay? So what I would suggest is, let's take a look at this question. I'll give you a simple trick to remember what is reducing and non-reducing sugar, okay, or carbohydrate. So here we go. Which of the following is a non-reducing carbohydrate? A, is it maltose? B, sucrose? C, lactose? Or D, ribose 5-phosphate? Let's understand how did this get, what exactly are we talking about? Now see children, if you take a look at the sugars or what are carbohydrates? Carbohydrates are what? They are classified as what? They're classified as monosaccharide, disaccharide, polysaccharide. Of course, there's oligo also, but just basic one. Monosaccharide, disaccharide, and polysaccharide. The word saccharide was derived from the Greek word sugar. Okay, saccharine, saccharine. So it means sugar. So now when you take a look at this particular sugar, sucrose. Sucrose is a disaccharide, which means di means two. It has two monomeric units. Okay, these what you see individually, you call them monomeric units. When monomeric units join together, you get a polymer. Okay, so here, how are these monomeric units held together? By certain bonds. Every compound that you see, every biomolecule that you will come across will show you different type of bonds coming into picture. The bond which you will see in protein will be a peptide bond. Here in case of carbohydrate, what you see is a glycosidic bond. Are you expected to remember that? Absolutely yes. You are expected to know that. Okay. So glycosidic bonds are involved in linking of these two monomeric units, or even if there is three, basically linking of the monomeric units. Now, here we go. If you observe this bond formation, you can see that there will either be an aldehyde group involved or a ketone group involved. An aldehyde or a ketone group. If these group, the aldehyde or the ketone group, if it is free, okay, if it is free, then what is going to happen? Then it is going to be a reducing sugar. If it is not free, it is a non-reducing sugar. So which are the two groups that you are questioning? There will be so many more. You must have studied a lot in chemistry. But at the moment, stay focused. We are concentrating on aldehyde and ketone. Okay? So aldehyde and ketone, everybody. If these two are involved in the bond and they are not free, then it is non-reducing. Okay? Now I'll give you, like I told you, there will be a trick that I'll give you. How do you know which is reducing and which is non-reducing? Concept-wise, think about it. If you're sitting free at home, if you're free, probably don't have any other work, you might have some of your parent, like, either of your parent coming and saying like, okay, you please put your books in place, or, please fold your clothes and finish your this thing. So if you're sitting free, you will be given tasks which will reduce your energy. If you're sitting free, you will be given tasks to reduce your energy. Just remember this. So free, reducing. If you're free, your energy will be reduced by giving you other work. You're free to do this, so go reduce. Are you getting that? Keep this simple trick in mind. If you're free, tasks will come, energy will be reduced. So this is just a trick. So anything which has a free aldehyde and ketone group will be a reducing sugar. If there is no free group, it is a non-reducing sugar. Remember this trick. Okay. Now, having said this, let's take a look at your free group. How does a free group look? See this specific set. You will find, in case of maltose especially, that there is a free aldehyde group. Not all sugars might have the same thing. So there is a free aldehyde group in case of maltose. So if there is a free aldehyde group, it will be reducing or non-reducing. Think free, go do the work. So energy reduced, interest reduced, right? So free group, reducing. Keep this in mind, okay? So what is your answer when you take a look at these options? Now these you might have to, like, by heart, three examples of reducing and non-reducing. You'll be prepared well. So sucrose, children. Sucrose is a non-reducing sugar because you just saw the structure. It does not have a free aldehyde and ketone group. They are involved in the formation of the bond. Can you see that? And how is the sucrose formed? Sucrose is formed by a combination of glucose and fructose. So if fructose is ketone group and the aldehyde group, they are both going to contribute to the formation of this specific molecule or this specific compound. Clear, everyone? Let's just sum up your answer now. Carbohydrates that have free aldehyde or keto group are called reducing sugar. Remember, free, go to the work, reduce your energy. Okay. Then next, if there is no free aldehyde or keto group, then the carbohydrate is non-reducing sugar. Sucrose is an example of non-reducing sugar, whereas the other three, maltose, lactose, ribose, 5-phosphate are reducing sugar. Now quickly, if they are reducing sugar, what exactly are they? Free, they're free. Okay, they have free what? Aldehyde or a ketone group. Okay, again keep saying that. Free, then reducing. Not free, non-reducing. Easy? This is a very important question, children. Lactose is composed of what? Now see, children, when you studied carbohydrate, you came across the classification which was based as monosaccharide, disaccharide, polysaccharide, isn't it? Monosaccharides was what? A single sugar. But when you talk about di and poly, you see that they are basically made up of many monomeric units. We call it monomeric units. We could have called it parts and all, but that doesn't really make it very biomolecularly. So we use the word monomeric units. So here we see lactose is composed of what? Glucose plus glucose, B, glucose plus fructose, C, fructose and galactose, or D, glucose and galactose. If you don't know what the answer is, trust me, the word in itself is telling you the answer. So guess, lactose. Can you see is there any word here on your screen which is talking about lactose secretly or openly? So here we go, lactose, isn't it? Can you see lactose, a part of galactose? Yeah. And another trick that I'll tell you, glucose. Isn't that like the most common sugar that you have heard so far? So glucose and galactose, this is what will give you the disaccharide lactose. Okay. So lactose is composed of what? Glucose and galactose. Let's see how. First of all, let's get acquainted to what is lactose. Lactose is a very important constituent of milk and milk products. You must have heard across, or maybe you must have come across people who, or heard of people who are lactose intolerant, which means if they consume products containing lactose, their body is not able to digest it, which makes it very difficult for them, or their digestive system also doesn't feel very comfortable. They might experience flatulence and bloating and maybe some cases diarrhea. Okay, so you may see what is lactose. It is sugar found in milk. All right. Now further, what we also should know is how is it formed. Like we already know that galactose and glucose will both come together to form a glycosidic linkage. This glycosidic linkage will hold these two structures, monomeric unit, together, making the disaccharide lactose. Now let's sum this up. What about the other combinations that were given in your question? We'll see that too. Lactose is a disaccharide made up of glucose and galactose, which we already know, and is found in milk and milk products, joined together by a glycosidic bond. Easy? That's it. What about the other combinations that you saw in your question? Maltose. You also saw glucose and glucose. So glucose plus glucose makes a disaccharide, maltose. Glucose and galactose gives you lactose. Glucose and fructose gives you sucrose. All right. So if you have not by hearted that, what I would suggest is just take a look, note it down. And are you supposed to remember this? Absolutely yes. You have to remember this. It can come as some secondary question somewhere.